So we have various definitions of text, and we have an etymology that is associated with text. So if you look at the dictionary definition of a text, then you will find that text is a written or printed work in terms of content rather than physical form. Now, two terms are used. One is the physical form, so something that is printed or written that you basically find in a physical form. That means you can touch that stuff. But here again, the physical form is not that important, but the content, the subject matter, the quality of that work is more important. And when a text has a quality, then a text has textuality. So this ity suffix and the meaning of this ity suffix here, that quality of being something. So quality of being a text is known as textuality. So this is the dictionary definition, and when we try to find out that where a text is situated, then we will find that a text is always situated in a context. Context is that comes before and after a text. So when the text falls under context, then you will get the meaning of a text. You greet someone good morning and the reply is John loves Mary, then it is out of context. It has no meaning, because you know that the reply of good morning is good morning. A reply of hi hello is again hi hello good morning how are you. So all such things are associated with each other. So this text, let's say good morning, is a text, a spoken text, that when you meet someone and you say good morning, and in reply if someone says John loves Mary, then you will be surprised to know that why someone is saying John loves Mary, because it is out of context. So out of context a text can never occur. The text will always occur in a context, and a text, when it occurs in a context, then it gets its meaning. Now we have an etymology associated with the text, and what is this etymology we will try to look at. So we find that the text, the word text has been derived from Latin root textus, and the meaning of this Latin root is tissue and literary style. Now two things are there. When we take into consideration tissue, then text means the fabric. So the cloth we wear, it is also a text, because they have some texture. So they are also woven. So we have thin thread, and when we knit those thin thread, then we have a fabric. So one meaning is of text is fabric, that is associated with clothes, and another is literary style. So you know that how important is the role of each thread when you have a fine fabric. So when you have a fine fabric, then you know that each thread is in its place. It is not the case like it is out of its place, in its place. So similarly, when we talk about style, particularly when we talk about text and literary text, then we know that each word is perfectly placed. If a word is not perfectly placed, then a text will never become a text. So this metaphor woven, that is we use when it comes to fabric, that is also very much applicable when we talk about text. So these meanings you need to keep in mind, that meaning associated with tissue, the meaning that is associated with the knitting, meaning that is associated with weaving. So all such things are quite important that we have. Now, when we read literature, then we find that literature is textual. So one definition of literature is a textual form. And why literature is called a textual form, or literature has a textual form? Because in literature we find both the things. A literature has a literary style, that is one thing, that meaning is also associated with text. And what we find, that it is very finely woven, that also we find. So both these meanings, both these etymological meaning are quite associated with the word literature that we have. And literature here in this course, MA in English, is an object of study. Literature here is a discipline that you are studying. So what is literature? The primary definition of a literature is that something that has a textual form, and that textual form must have two elements, literary style and woven. And second is literature is an object of study. Now language. Saussure said that spoken is primary and writing secondary. What does it mean? It means that primary language, the spoken language comes first and then comes the written language. So we can't have literature without language. Language comes first, then literature. So when we have a literature, then language becomes the medium of text. Every literature, irrespective of the fact whether it is a written literature or an oral literature, it, it is written in a language. So language becomes the medium of text. At the same time, you also study language, and the discipline is known as linguistics. So language is also an object of study, and linguistics the meta language. So what is linguistics? Linguistics is like language about language. So you describe something about language using the language. That is the definition of meta language. So let's say you are studying phonology and you are studying English sounds. So what you are doing, you are writing about English sound using the English language. So that is linguistics, the meta language that we have. So these three things are quite important, and you need to understand that how these things are interrelated as well. Now I said that text is woven like a fabric. Text is woven like a cloth. So we will look at how a text is woven like a fabric, how a text is woven like a cloth, and what is the texture of a text. So we have seen that literature, the definition of literature is a textual form that has a literary style and it is woven. So how it is woven? So for that we need to understand two types of relationships. First relationship is syntagmatic and another relationship is paradigmatic. First we will see the syntagmatic relationship that we have in a text. So let's say here you have the first and second line of a sonnet written by William Shakespeare. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Now we will look at what is syntagmatic relationship. Now syntagmatic relationship is a relationship of co-occurrence. Like these words they co-occur, but there is a restrictions. For example, as you can see that shall I compare thee to a summer's day? It is a question. It starts with a capital letter S and ends with a mark of interrogation. So you know that the English grammar tells you that if you want to make a question, then either you use a WH word or you used an auxiliary. Here this auxiliary is used shall. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? So shall here is a modal auxiliary. So if I change the order and if I make I shall compare thee to a summer's day, then definitely it will not be a question. It will become a declarative sentence. So this co-occurrence restriction is there. Co-occurrence restriction, that means if you want to make an interrogative, then the sentence must start with a WH or an auxiliary. At the same time, you know that shall I compare thee to a summer's day is quite meaningful because it follows the word order of the English language. So if I say shall, day, I, summers, thee, compare to a, then you will say like you are saying words, but these words are not in order. That means in order to follow the order, in order to follow the word order of the English language, I need to follow this syntagmatic relationship, this co-occurrence restrictions, that I have these words, but these words must occur in certain order. This type of relationship is known as syntagmatic relationship. So similarly, like the relationship of the word shall with I with compare, compare with thee with two with a with summers and day. This type of relationship is known as syntagmatic relationship. And as you can see that this relationship is on this panel, like on the x-axis, and you have this y-axis. So horizontal, This is horizontal and this is vertical. Syntagmatic relationship occurs on horizontal axis. We write English language from left to right. So similarly, in the second line, the relationship between thou and art. Thou art, art means are. The old English is art. Thou means you. You are more lovely and more temperate. So again, like the relationship between thou and art and more and lovely, and more and temperate. So this type of relationship, these words they occur together, but these words they do not occur at random. So there is some co-occurrence restriction that we have, and this co-occurrence restriction is known as syntagmatic relationship. Now I said like we will discuss another type of relationship that is known as paradigmatic relationship. For example, I can substitute summer with spring. I can say, shall I compare thee to a spring's morning? So what am I doing? I am just simply substituting summer with spring. I am substituting day with morning, and there is no problem in that. Shall I compare thee to a spring's morning? So a spring's morning is also a good comparison that I am making for the beloved. So this type of thing, I can change shall with will. Will I compare thee to a spring's morning? That is also a beautiful line. There is no problem in that. So writers, they have these things in their mind. Before they write poetry, they have already internalized all these relationships which are responsible for the meaningful use of language, syntagmatic relationship and paradigmatic relationship. Similarly, in the second line, I can substitute the word lovely with beautiful. I can say thou art more beautiful and more calm in place of more temperate. So these type of choices are there. The first choice is syntagmatic choice and second choice is paradigmatic choice. So these two choices, these two relationships are talked about. They are given by Ferdinand de Saussure, and these relationships they talked about like how language works actually. So these are actually the two axes of semantic relations that we have. So paradigmatic is the relationship of contrast and substitution. Like I am not using this word, but I am using that word. I am not using the word temperate, but I am using the word calm. I am not using the word lovely. I am using the word beautiful. I am not using the word summer. I am using the word spring. I am not using the word day, but I am using the word morning. So what is this? A contrast. Like summer is not spring, spring is not summer. Day is not morning, morning is not day. Lovely is not beautiful, beautiful is not lovely. What is this? This is a relationship of contrast and substitution. Paradigmatic relationship is a relationship of contrast and substitution. And syntagmatic relationship is a relationship of combination, but it is not a random combination, but it is a co-occurrence restriction, that one word occurs with other word following the grammatical rule of that particular language. So we find these relationship even at sound level. So we know that we have a word like cat, we have a word like sat, we have a word like mat. And if I ask you that what is the difference between these three, you will say like the first sound is different. So the first sound is different, and that's why the words are different. So one sound difference makes difference in meaning. Cat is cat because cat is not sat. Sat is sat because sat is not mat. At a stylistic level, you will also find this paradigmatic relationship of contrast and substitution. Let's say I am writing a poetry and the first line is sun is shining bright. Then we know there is a concept of end rhyme, that the last word of the first line must rhyme with the last word of the second line. So what will I do? I will search in the language that what will be the word that is rhyming with the first line. The sun is shining bright. This is a lovely sight. So that way I can create a poetry. So at a stylistic level, we also find the relationship of paradigmatic semantic relations. Then we have at syntactic level as well. At syntactic level, I can say the cat sat on the mat. I can say the cat slept on the mat. So when I say the cat slept on the mat in place of the cat sat, then this type of relationship is of contrast and substitution. So the contrast and substitution is like on the vertical axis, and syntagmatic relationship is on the horizontal axis, that you need to remember. So I cannot say cat the sat. I always say the cat sat. Fine. So that type of restriction that we have when we combine words. So there is a grammatical restriction of word order that we have in a language. So why these relationships are important when we study text and textuality? Because the entire text is woven like this. So like one word is like one thread, one word is like one fabric, and these words they combine together and they make the entire text. So this metaphor that we have used, like the text is also a tissue, a text is also a fabric, the text is also a cloth, and a text is woven similarly, and uh, and it gets the similar care as we are weaving a cloth, weaving a fabric. So that's why these two relationships are very much functional when we talk about the textuality, when we talk about that how text gets textuality because a text uh, takes care of these two relationship, these two semantic relationship, paradigmatic and syntagmatic. So when we study textuality, discourse, and particularly when we know that syntagmatic relationship and paradigmatic relationship, how important they are in order to get text its textuality, then we also need to understand that these two relationships are given by Saussure. And Saussure writes that everything depends upon relations. So if we apply this phrase, everything depends upon relation, to our day-to-day life, then we know that how relationships are important for us, how parents are important for us, how our brothers and sisters and family is important for us. We can't live, we can't survive without our family. So that means everything depends upon relation is not only a language specific statement, but it is also very much a social statement, that if we take care of relations and if we nurture our relations, then we can have a very good life, a very good quality life. But here, since the focus is on language, and particularly we are dealing with syntagmatic and paradigmatic relations, then everything depends upon relations. That means, like, if you want to create a text and you want that a text has some textuality, then you must take care of these two relations, paradigmatic relations and syntagmatic relation. At the same time, a word or a morpheme can be considered as a sign in Saussurean linguistics. So a sign is a sign because a sign has signifier and signified in it. That means a tree is a tree because tree can be pronounced as tree, tree can be written as tree. At the same time, in the sign tree, we have the concept of tree associated with that. So this tree lexicon, that means how it is pronounced, the tree lexicon, how it is spelled, what is the grammatical category of the tree, then its various usages, all such things are already stored in your mind with the concept of the tree. So a sign has all such things there, and the signifier and signified are the two sides of a piece of paper. This metaphor is used by Farinadi Saussure, that signified and signified, they are two sides of a piece of a paper. If I ask you to define paper, or if I ask you to give me a definition of a paper, then you will say a paper is a paper because it has two sides. So there is not a possibility that a paper has only one side. So similarly, a sign is a sign because sign has inherently signifier and signified. That means a morpheme, a word, we know how to pronounce it, how to write it. At the same time, we also know the concept associated with that meaning. So one sign interacts with other sign, then sign 2 interacts with other sign, and that's why the entire language comes into being. So in a text, you have different words, they continuously interact with each other, and because of that, you have the entire text meaningful. So sometimes, like, you have a longer text like novel, you have a longer text like a lengthy poem, or let's say a drama, then there is a possibility that the sentence 1 that is used in the text must have some relationship with the sentence 350 that is there in the text. So that relationship is to be found by the careful reader, by the audience. So they read each and everything quite carefully, that what is the relationship of sentence 1 with sentence 50. So once you do a textual analysis, once you do a literary analysis, then you take the entire text holistically. That means you take the text as one and you apply the things that are there in the particular text. So when we talk about how text is constituted, then as a student of linguistics, you already know that we start with a phoneme and we reach to a sentence. That means, like, phoneme is the minimal meaningful sound unit in a language and sentence is the largest unit that is to be studied in syntax. So we have phonemes they combine together, then we have syllables they combine together, then we have morphemes they combine together, then we have then words they combine together, then we have phrases we combine together, we have clause, and then clauses and sentence. So here you can see like ba is a phoneme, then b at, then three phonemes, then you have bat, then bat is one morpheme, and sa is another morpheme, then bats, then bats is a word, then two words like the and bats, so you have the bats, then you have a clause like while it is proved is one clause, the bats harbor viruses, that is another clause. So what is the difference between a clause and a sentence? The difference between a clause and a sentence is that in a sentence you can have more than one subject and predicate, whereas in a clause you have only one subject and one predicate. As you can see, like while it is proved is a clause because it has only one subject it, and proved is your predicate. At the same time, the bats harbor viruses. Now again, the bat is your subject and harbor viruses is your predicate, but only while it is proved is one clause, the bats harbor viruses is another clause. But as you can see in the sentence that it is proved, like you have one subject it and the bat is another subject in the same sentence. So this is basically the difference between a clause and a sentence that you have. So you know like how the text is entirely constituted. At the same time, you know linguistically that if you have more than one sentence and those two sentences are interrelated and interdependent upon each other, then you have the concept of discourse. So what is the concept of discourse? First condition is you must have more than one sentence, and here we have taken one example from Cohesion in English by Halliday and Hassan. This is a book by Halliday and Hassan, and what is this text? Wash and core 6 apples, put them in a bowl. So there are two sentences, and these two sentences are interdependent, interrelated to each other, and we will see how. So as you can see that these two sentences, they do not have a subject. So generally the imperative sentences in the English language, we do not have a subject. So these are subjectless sentences, but we know that the subject, the elliptical subject, is very much recoverable from the context. You know, wash and core 6 apples means you wash and core 6 apples. Put them in a bowl means you put them in a bowl. So you is very much recoverable from the context. That's why you becomes redundant and you are not using you. Now we will look at what is the cohesive relation between these, like put them in a bowl. Now the bowl, them, is associated with 6 apples. If I ask like what is them here, you will quickly reply them refers to 6 apples. So them gets its meaning because them is crossing the sentence boundary and getting its meaning from the previous sentence. So cohesive relation there is between them and 6 apples. So them is your anaphor because this anaphor them is in the search of the meaning. This pronoun is in the search of the meaning, and the previous sentence gives its meaning to them. So something that gives its meaning becomes the antecedent, and something that is in the search of the meaning is anaphor, and particularly a pronoun is known as anaphor. So here anaphor is them and 6 apples is antecedent, and you find cohesive relations across sentence boundary we have. So this is one example of discourse that we have. So I stop here, and this is the starting of textuality and discourse that we have. So if you have any question, any doubt, you can ask. I'll be happy to answer, and I will also ask something from this class as well. So you must read this today's session. Take care of today's session as well. So any other question if you have, you can ask me. I'll be happy to answer. And someone just messaged me